Okay. All right. We're recording again. The press and the mainstream would like you to believe that we're conspiracy theorists if we talk about the Federal Reserve or anything like that. Okay. Yeah, Bernie Sanders. Now, somebody on my chat room refers to him as the Independent Socialist House rep from Vermont. An independent. And so we got to make the independent, the socialist, a bad guy? Well, I don't know. I'm not necessarily buying into that. Because I want you to hear what Bernie Sanders has to say in the Senate. In the Senate, okay?
There is a war going on in this country, and I'm not referring, but...
Maybe I better let him repeat that. Crank it up a little bit. For the last 10 years, at least the last 6 years, since the attack on me, put me in the hospital, raising up a $750,000 hospital bill. I've said we're in a war. We are in a war. But it's not very often that you hear somebody, and I hear somebody that is not controlled by the Republicans or the Democrats, two wings of the same bird. And whether he's a socialist, but he is telling you something here that is accurate and on the money. And whether you're Bernie Sanders and you're a socialist, or you're Alex Jones and you're a patriot, you know, it's what they don't say generally that is important. Good propaganda is 90% truth. Now, let's hear what Bernie Sanders, Senator Bernie Sanders. Now, he was in the House of Representatives for about 18 years. And here he is in the Senate.
Mr. President, Senator from Vermont is recognized. Mr. President, there is a war going on in this country, and I'm not referring to the war in Iraq or the war in Afghanistan. I'm talking about a war being waged by some of the wealthiest and most powerful people in this country against the working families of the United States of America, against the disappearing and shrinking middle class of our country. The reality is that many of the nation's billionaires are on the warpath. They want more, more, more. Their greed has no end, and apparently there is very little concern for our country or for the people of this country if it gets in the way of the accumulation of more and more wealth and more power. Mr. President, in the year 2007, the top 1% of all income earners in the United States made 23.5% of all income. Top 1% earned 23.5% of all income, more than the entire bottom 50%. That's apparently not enough. The percentage of income going to the top 1% nearly tripled since the 1970s. In the mid-1970s, the top 1% earned about 8% of all income. In the 1980s, that figure jumped to 14%. In the late 1990s, that 1% earned about 19%. And today, as the middle class collapses, top 1% earns 23.5% of all income, more than the bottom 50%. Today, if you can believe it, the top 0.1% earns about 12 cents of every dollar earned in America. So we talk about a lot of things on the floor of the Senate, but somehow we forget to talk about the reality of who is winning in this economy and who is losing. And it is very clear to anyone who spends 2 minutes studying the issue that the people on top are doing extraordinarily well at the same time as the middle class is collapsing and poverty is increasing. Mr. President, if you can believe this, many people out there are angry. They're wondering what's happening to their own income, to their lives, the lives of their kids. Since between 1980 and 2005, 80% of all new income created in this country went to the top 1%. 80% of all new income. And that's why people are wondering and asking, what's going on in my life? How come I'm working longer hours for lower wages? How come I'm worrying about whether my kids will have as good a standard of living as I've had? From 1980 to 2005, 80% of all income went to the top 1%. Today, the Wall Street executives, the crooks on Wall Street, whose actions resulted in the severe recession that we are in right now, the people whose actions, illegal actions, reckless actions, have resulted in millions of Americans losing their jobs, their homes, their savings. Guess what? After we bailed them out, the CEOs today are now earning more money than they did before the bailout. Mr. President, while the middle class of this country collapses and the rich become much richer, the United States now has by far the most unequal distribution of income and wealth of any major country on earth. When we were in school, we used to read the textbooks which talked about the banana republics in Latin America. We used to read the books about countries in which a handful of people owned and controlled most of the wealth of those countries. Well, guess what? That's exactly what is happening in the United States today. Mr. President, the wealthiest people in this country, not all of them, by the way, not all of them. There are many wealthy people in this country who understand and are proud to be Americans, who understand that one of the things that's important is that all of us do well. But there are, on the other hand, many others whose apparently only concern is more and more wealth and more power for themselves. And this is an issue, this greed is an issue that we have got to deal with. Now, in the midst of all of this, growing income and wealth inequality in this country, we are now faced with the issue of what we do with the Bush tax cuts of 2001 and 2003. And if you can believe it, we have people here, many of my Republican colleagues, who tell us, oh, I am so concerned about our record-breaking deficit. I am terribly concerned about a $13.7 trillion national debt. Terribly concerned about the debt that we're going to be leaving to our kids and our grandchildren. But wait a minute. It's very important that we give over a 10-year period $700 billion in tax breaks to the top 2%. Oh yeah, we're concerned about the debt, we're concerned about the deficit, but we are more concerned that millionaires, people who earn at least $1 million a year or more, get on average $100,000 a year in tax breaks. So you got a $13.7 trillion national debt growing. You've got growing income inequality, top 1% earning more income than the bottom 50%. But the highest priority of many of my Republican colleagues is to make sure that millionaires and billionaires get more tax breaks. I think that that is absurd. But it is not only income tax rates that we're dealing with. It is the estate tax as well. And let's be clear, while some of my friends want to eliminate completely the estate tax, which has been in existence in this country since 1916, let us be clear that every nickel of benefit, all of those benefits, will go to the top 0.3%. And if we did, as some of my friends would like, eliminate the estate tax completely, it would cost us $1 trillion in revenue over a 10-year period, all of the benefits going to the top 0.3%.